You're listening to Win the Day with James Whittaker.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Broadcasting from Los Angeles, California. Here's your host, James Whittaker.
Let's go.
Welcome back to Win the Day. I'm super excited for this episode because it's the 5th annual holiday gift guide. Before we get into it, make sure you hit the follow or the subscribe button so you can get access to episodes like this one as soon as they're released. Also, a big shout out and thank you if you've left a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for the Win the Day show. The more ratings we get, the more likely it'll be to reach someone out there who badly needs it. So thank you for helping spread the word so we can help more people win the day every day. And if you haven't left a 5-star rating yet, it'll take you literally 3 seconds, and I'd really appreciate it. Welcome to my 5th annual holiday gift guide. I can't believe we're at 5 years already. Each year I share the items that have made the biggest impact on my life throughout the year, and I know they'll do the same for you or for someone else if you're giving it as a gift. If you're new to the holiday gift guide, it always revolves around books. Why, I hear you ask? Because most people buy some crappy thing that ends up in the trash shortly after, and there's a massive deficit of people accessing things that are truly going to change their life forever. If you've developed the habit of reading and implementing, most importantly, what you learn from that reading, you've got one of the greatest competitive advantages you could ever hope for. Now, when I read, I do a combination of physical books, audiobooks, and ebooks because each has their own time and place. And I get asked all the time because I read so many books each year what my process is for that. Well, I read the physical books before I go to bed or before I start work in the morning. I listen to audiobooks when I'm driving or if I'm on the go. And I read ebooks when I need a fast ingestion of the book because I'm on a time crunch or I've read it before. That's so easy with the ebooks just to be able to scroll through them very quickly, more of a reference than a full read. So when it comes to your reading, I want you to find out what works for you and stick with it. But don't feel like you need to memorize every word. The goal is to think about what you want to get from reading the book, your intent, and how you're going to put what you read into action. Get through the book as fast as you can so the result is achieved because you can always revisit things that stood out or that you want a recap on a little bit later. Finish your book and keep that momentum by diving into another book you're excited about. So many people I talk to who don't have a passion for reading, it's because they're stuck on the same book because they want to finish it and they can't. If you're looking at a gift for someone other than yourself, a hardcover book is probably best. Even though I love audiobooks, anytime I find a book that really speaks to me, I'm sure to grab a copy of the hardcover version too, so I can use it as a quick reference point whenever I need it. In fact, the coffee table behind the camera that I'm looking at now has got books all over it, as well as the bookshelf behind me and in the cupboard over there. So without further ado, here are the books that I think would make the best gifts this holiday season for you, a friend, or a loved one. Before we dive into the good stuff, let's touch on a quote for today, which comes from personal development icon and one of my great mentors, Jim Rohn, who said, "Reading is essential for those who seek to rise above the ordinary. Miss a meal, but don't miss a book. Reading is essential for those who seek to rise above the ordinary. Miss a meal, but don't miss a book." Let's get into our ultimate holiday gift guide for 2022. To kick things off, the best book overall is Breakpoint by Ollie Ollerton. This is an incredible book that takes us straight into not only the Special Forces mindset, but also the person behind the Special Forces operator. And that person was a boy growing up in the UK who was almost killed by a chimpanzee at a traveling circus. He led a bit of a wild teenage phase, and there's some great stories about that. And eventually, Ollie became a Royal Marine Commando at 18 years old. What I love about Ollie is how big his heart is. He's so upfront with his vulnerabilities, and he tells the stories in a way that you feel like you're actually there. The book is called Breakpoint, and when he talks about breakpoint, he's referring to those moments of self-doubt that force you to step up and be the best you can be. Throughout the book, Ollie reveals the biggest breakpoints he's faced throughout his life, some incredible moments that took him from a boy who almost died after that savage attack to becoming one of the most elite soldiers and now business people on the planet. That's right, your breakpoints make you who you are if you let them. And this book is for anyone who wants some motivation to step up what you're doing, who's in a dark place right now, or simply wants an exhilarating ride through a book that's equal parts adventure novel and personal development. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10 rating from me, and it's rare that I say that. Honestly, I couldn't put it down. It's also got more than 4,000 5-star ratings on Amazon and is the best book I've read in 2022. Check out Breakpoint by Ollie Ollerton. That's my recommendation for the best book overall. The best book on relationships is Beyond Mars and Venus by Dr. John Gray. John is an absolute master at his craft. I had the opportunity to spend a full day with him before we did his interview for the Win the Day podcast, and I was in awe of everything he shared and just watching him work. If you want to know how to take your romantic relationship to the next level, he is the man to guide you, and this is the book to show you. I've learned so much in such a short period of time about how to improve the relationship I have with my wife, Jen. John helped me realize how often men butt in with solutions rather than asking more questions and listening, which is what women actually want. John also shares a lot of tips on the flip side so women can strengthen the connection that they have with their partner too. The podcast episode I did with John is the most listened to episode of the Win the Day podcast ever, and it's also one of the most recent ones we did, so it's definitely struck a chord with people all over the world, so make sure you check out the podcast episode that I did with Dr. John Gray too. Beyond Mars and Venus is a modern version of his seminal book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which is one of the best-selling books of all time, and I'd recommend it to anyone who wants to improve your marriage, gain more awareness on how your actions are hindering your happiness, and for a fundamental overview of effective communication. I mean, communication is everything. It's the foundation of all great relationships, especially the ones you have in the home. So that's my recommendation for the best book on relationships and communication, Beyond Mars and Venus by Dr. John Gray. The best book on business is $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. This is really a book on sales. It shows you how to start charging a lot more for your product or service while also being able to deliver more of what your client or your customer needs to get the result they want. Alex also talks about the importance of targeting the right people with your offer, who you can think of as the starving crowd, rather than trying to sell to people who don't have that urgent need for what you're selling anyway. The whole premise of $100 million offers is that you need to move away from a commoditized offer to what Alex calls a grand slam offer. When you have a commoditized offer, people can compare what you're selling with a whole bunch of other providers. And when that happens, it's simply a race to the bottom on price. And you definitely don't want to be in that game. I mean, look at how many people Walmart and Target are putting out of business. On the other hand, when you have a grand slam offer that Alex talks about, you have something that cannot be compared to any other product or service. That includes things like stronger promotion, an unmatched value proposition, a premium price, and an unbeatable price guarantee. If something is so valuable, people won't be able to benchmark it against others, and they'll feel confident making the decision to give you their business. It's a win-win for everybody. $100 Million Offers is the best book on sales I've ever read, and Alex Hormozi is blowing up the socials. Get it for someone who has their own business or is looking to start their own business, or someone who is in professional services. They'll love you for it. So that's my recommendation on the best book for business, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. The best book on personal finance is 10 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom by Noel Whittaker. A lot of you, especially in Australia, know that Noel's my dad. I interviewed him on the Win the Day podcast in episode 87, and thank you so much to everyone who left feedback and some lovely comments on that. Noel's entire life has been about helping young people with financial literacy so they can achieve financial freedom as quickly as possible. Now that he has 13 grandchildren, and I've only contributed 2 of those grandchildren, my brother has 7 7 kids, and my sister has 4 kids, so the 2 of them have done most of the heavy lifting. My dad's been thinking about how he can communicate the necessary steps and habits from everything that he's learnt from all his time in personal finance so his grandchildren can take charge of their financial future as quickly as possible. But once he got started on the project, he realized it would actually be a great resource for other people to be able to give their kids and their grandkids. The book just came out last month. It sold tens of thousands of copies without even being in the bookstores yet. It's going to bookstores real soon, I believe in January. But you can grab it online through his website, noelwhittaker.com.au. I'll include a link to all of these through in the show notes, and you'll be able to have that delivered to you in time for Christmas if you get in fast. For some background, Noel is the author of 23 best-selling books, including Making Money Made Simple, that sold more than 2 million copies and is ranked in the top 100 books of the 20th century. So if there's a teenager or young adult who you want to motivate, get them this book. It's a really easy read and they can start making their own money so they don't need to spend yours. That's my best book recommendation on personal finance, 10 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom by Noel Whittaker. The best book on sleep is Energize by Dr. Michael Bruce and Stacey Griffith. Dr. Michael Bruce is known as the sleep doctor and is the only person who has come on the Win the Day podcast twice. He's the personal sleep doctor to some of the most well-known CEOs and entertainers on the planet. The 2 podcast episodes we did together are both in the top 5 most popular episodes of the Win the Day podcast ever released. Michael's latest book, Energize, provides a practical and detailed guide to having more energy each day. He's co-authored it with Stacey Griffith, who's a fitness expert and one of the founding instructors of SoulCycle. They talk about the importance of understanding your sleep chronotype so you know the best time of day to do literally everything. Then they delve into what the right exercise for you should be so you can move better, feel better, and sleep better, as well as how sleep and exercise go hand in hand and where most people are getting it wrong. Michael's a great guy and he's become a really close friend of mine. I know how much effort that he and Stacey put into this book and it shows. So get Energized for someone who feels flat or wants to upgrade their performance, or for someone who wants to optimize their sleep so they can get more out of each day. That's Energized by Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and Stacey Griffith. Next is the best book on professional relationships. You know how much I love talking about relationships, and there are actually 2 books I want to include in this category. The first book is called What's in It for Them by Joe Polish. What's in It for Them by Joe Polish. Joe is one of the most connected people on the planet and runs Genius Network, which is one of the top masterminds for entrepreneurs that you can find anywhere in the world. His goal with What's in It for Them was to expand and modernize the teachings of Dale Carnegie, who you might recall as the author of How to Win Friends and Influence People, that was released in 1938 and is a phenomenal book in its own right. Not only does Joe share a lot of stories from his own incredible roller coaster life, he also includes practical steps to help you upgrade your professional network as quickly as possible. The premise of the book is simple and it's so interesting, and that's around asking the question of how are people suffering and how can I help? How are people suffering and how can I help? When you know who you want to connect with and you start asking yourself that question, your network will expand like wildfire. The second book on professional networks that I want to share is called Go for Stupid by Steve Sims. We've actually got Steve coming on the Win the Day podcast really soon. He's mates with people like Elon Musk, Elton John, Richard Branson. Just Google him and you'll see photos with all these people, as well as a bunch of other A-listers. Steve's entire career has been forged in providing unique and unforgettable experiences for people, and he shares the what and the how in this book so you can do it too. The whole idea is that you should actually lean into stupid decisions because you might be the only one who's brave enough to pull them off. That all comes back to the mentality that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, as Wayne Gretzky famously said. And that's one of my favorite all-time quotes and the mentality that I live with today. Steve also shares a lot of the special ways he gets connected and stays connected with influential people and some of the out-of-the-box ideas that he's used to strengthen the relationships he has with his clients. Both books are a super easy and fun read, so that's What's in It for Them by Joe Polish and Go for Stupid by Steve Sims, the 2 best books on upgrading your professional network. The best book on mindset is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Now, I discovered this book a little while ago when I was looking through the directory for the Pathfinder Mastermind, which is an event that I attend in Texas every single year. The directory for the Mastermind includes a lot of personal info, but also the favorite book from the 60 people who attend the Mastermind, who are always really interesting and successful people from around the world. So I love to know what they're reading. One of the most popular books listed in that directory, aside from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which I think was the most popular one on there, was The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, so I knew I had to check it out. Straight away, I could see why it has resonated with so many people. The idea is that the only problem in life that you will ever face is your inner voice. Once you get good at observing that inner voice and how it operates, you can make it a person who is responsible for those thoughts. I almost always have a lot of thoughts racing through my head, which can be tough. It's almost impossible to switch off, especially when you're trying to go to sleep. But I was able to create a person, a character who was responsible for all of those thoughts that were racing through my head. So now when I get ready to go to sleep, I tell this person, thanks for today, let's catch up tomorrow. And I literally visualize, I can see that person walking away and taking the thoughts with them. And almost immediately, my mind becomes still and I enter a deep sleep. So if you know of someone who has a tough time with negative self-talk or quieting their mind, or who has even been through significant trauma, this book will be life-changing for them. I guarantee you that. It's a monster hit all around the world. So that's the best book on mindset, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I wanted to leave you with two bonus ideas that aren't books. First is the best action, and that's an unsolicited, heartfelt apology. When he came on the podcast for episode 109, Dr. Mark Goulston, who's a former FBI negotiation trainer and one of the top psychiatrists in all of America, mentioned that there is great power to an unsolicited, heartfelt apology. So if you've been hanging on to something that you think about often, maybe it's a conversation you need to have or an action you took that you regret, one of the fastest ways to rectify that is to see the person in question face to face and then lead with the unsolicited, heartfelt apology. That vulnerability, leading with that vulnerability, encourages the other person to drop their guard, and you almost instantly might be able to connect better with them than you ever have before. This could be a conversation with a friend, a parent, a child, a business partner, maybe even a work colleague. Whoever it is, free yourself of that burden and strengthen the connection between the two of you by leading with that unsolicited, heartfelt apology. No podcast episode I've ever done has impacted me more deeply than the one I did with Dr. Mark Goulston, so I strongly encourage you to check it out, especially if you or someone close to you has been dealing with some mental health challenges. So remember, the best action, lead with the unsolicited, heartfelt apology. The final recommendation on this list, which is the best gift or the best gift accompaniment for everyone, is a letter or a card, handwritten, if your handwriting is not too terrible, to acknowledge the recipient for all of the loving and selfless actions that they have taken to brighten your world and illuminate your spirit in the last 12 months. Expressing our gratitude to one another in the long-form written medium has become a lost art, but that just means your opportunity to make an impression will be even more powerful. You've heard me say many times before that the best way to get is to give first. The best way to get is to give first. It was also one of the core tenets of the book Andrew Carnegie's Mental Dynamite that I wrote with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So this holiday season, give someone a piece of your heart and watch the way your life changes as a result. So that's the best gift or gift accompaniment, a handwritten card of gratitude. I hope you enjoyed our 5th holiday gift guide. Remember, giving someone the ability to help themselves can be the best gift. Share a comment on the YouTube version of this episode with your favorite out of all of these options, or if any of these books already hold a place in your heart. And remember to give the Win the Day podcast a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. Until next time, get out there and win the day, perhaps by helping someone else to win their day. Onwards and upwards, always. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Win the Day podcast. We want to hear your thoughts on what we covered today, so drop a comment on the YouTube version of this episode with your favorite takeaway, any questions you have, or what actions you'll be taking as a result of what was shared in this episode. And if you found value in the Win the Day podcast, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You'll find a link to both of those in the show notes. It'll only take you a few seconds, and more ratings really helps other people discover the show so they can get the mindset upgrade they need, and we can bring more winners into the Win the Day movement. That's all for this episode. Get out there and win the day. Until next time, onwards and upwards, always.